So, hi everybody, welcome. Thank you for coming out today. My name is Rachel Jordan. I'm the Assistant Director of DIA, and this is Oscar Lazaro, and we're going to be giving you guys an update of anything new that we know from the last meeting, and we're going to give you a little bit of history of the site as well, since we definitely do see some new faces here today. Just a little bit of housekeeping. If you would please save your questions until the end, that would be great, so that we can get through our presentations, and then we can answer all of your questions as they come up at the end.
On that note, I would like to remind everyone that the PTA will be here on the 27th this month. So if there are any questions that you have towards the end that we can't answer, it'd be a good idea for us to just kind of get those together and make sure we take those to the PTA. It's been a while since we've been in the community. But on the Jones Road Superfund site, for anybody who has not been here for basically the past 20 years, this is the site at 11600 Jones Road. Basically used to be Bell Dry Cleaners. They operated from about 88 to 2002. And this map may be familiar to some of you folks. This is where the health department essentially asked people not to drill new wells. They did that. I'll go over the timeline here in a second, but basically when they identified this site, they were basically making a sale. So they were evaluating the property for a sale, and they discovered it in 2000, 2003 timeline, depending on what you're going over. And they did a phase 1 assessment of the site. They identified the contaminants. They basically saw a couple of leaks in the area, in the vicinity of the dry cleaner site, and there were a couple of explanations for it, but basically they noticed that there was a lot of PCE, polychloroethylene, in the soil. There were leaks from some of the equipment at the dry cleaner, and they went over a lengthy process, which is up here. So the Superfund process is really long, which, if anybody's been here over a long period of time, I know it's probably really, really frustrating, really involved, and can be very slow. So basically from 2002-ish to about 2008, the drilling restriction was imposed. They asked people not to drill wells. They finally moved into around 2008, where they asked people to get on city water. They asked people to cap their wells. Not everybody did that. So what I want to highlight here is that around 2008, 2010, the lead agency for this Superfund site changed from the local Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, the state agency. So it changed from them to the EPA, so the federal agency. And I think that for those of you who've been here in the area for a while, that may explain some of the miscommunication. It's been a long 20 years at least. I know that they had different strategies for doing outreach. TCEQ was, I think, last I checked, they were basically doing yearly meetings, is what it looked like. They did yearly meetings. From what I've gathered in the community, not everybody understood exactly what they were in the area for. So there's been some confusion, I know, with people that I've talked to in the area. So that's basically what happened between 2000 and 2008. TCEQ was identifying the problem, asking people to stop drilling new wells, and then the EPA took over. So when the EPA took over, they issued a time critical removal action, which is when they asked people to actually get on the city water. So up to that point, they had basically spent about 8 years trying to get people to stop drilling new wells. They let everybody in the greater Houston area that was licensed to drill wells know that this was an area where they shouldn't do it without following certain specifications. So 2010 to more recent timeline kind of brings us to where we are. They implemented some institutional controls in the site, so they basically identified a couple of ways that they could remediate the groundwater, because that's the concern here, is that the contaminants from the dry cleaner were leaking or being dumped. It looks like they did both. There was faulty equipment, and people were actually just dumping or letting this stuff vaporize into the into the atmosphere. So this was getting into the soil, which then got into the aquifer below, which is where most people in the area have their wells drilled into, and that created a groundwater plume. So that groundwater plume was being addressed by, I forget the exact term, but the EPA basically injected something that would biodegrade and break down the PCE into less concerning contaminants or none at all. So that brings us to now. In about 2018, 2019, they started addressing vapor concerns, which is kind of what we're talking about now. They identified really high concentrations of PCE, vinyl chloride, and a couple of other contaminants in the actual shopping center where this site was located at. And that it basically took about 10 years for them to address that and say, hey, we need to make sure people aren't being exposed to the vapors. So definitely a long, kind of, I would say, less than perfect process. I can't explain it, but it just takes that long. We're lucky it didn't take longer, unfortunately. Yeah, there's some sites that have been in this process for longer. It's just how the program works. But 2018, they put in the soil vapor extraction machinery, the equipment that's behind the site. Some of you may have seen it. It's I actually have a picture here, but oh, sorry, I'll get to that. But basically, they put in that soil vapor extraction machinery to pull vapors out of the site right under basically ground level, so the subsurface. They pulled vapors out, basically ran them through granular activated charcoal, GAC for short, and pump clean air back out into the atmosphere. So that's ideally how it works, but we have to keep in mind that that machinery basically just took, the top 10 feet or so of the soil on the site and took care of that. Didn't really address anything outside of that. So another note on the process. So Superfund is also known as CERCLA. CERCLA is the abbreviation for the statute itself. The Superfund program is essentially a pile of money, a bucket of money, that is solely in existence to clean up sites like this. And typically there's a responsible party for a site, in this case the dry cleaners, and the EPA tries to get them to pay for the cleanup. In this case, the dry cleaners went through all the litigation, and essentially declared bankruptcy and settled for $140,000, $160,000. That's it. So the cleanup has been coming out of the Superfund budget. There's nobody else to, try to get some money out of to address the cleanup. So that might explain why it's been a process. And essentially, the state will pay for the cleanup, or the federal program will pay for the cleanup. And to give a little more background on that, to be part of the Superfund program, the site has to be declared bad enough to be put on the national priority list. As you can imagine, prior to the establishment of the EPA in the 70s, there were a lot of people doing similar things to this, probably on larger scales, especially in Houston. So there's a lot of Superfund sites across the U.S. And they're all competing for the same budget, for the same, the same money. So it's not perfect. It's definitely frustrating. So these are some of the signs at the ground zero. One of our goals has been to try to get a sign at the actual shopping center, because the signs, you can't see the signs from Jones Road. The signs are on Verily Lane. People can walk up to the shopping center, go inside, hang out for an hour, sit down with their kids and eat, and nobody's going to tell them what's happening. So this is a small victory for us. Before, there was just one small sign in English, and we wrote a letter to the EPA asking them to put up a sign at least in Spanish and Vietnamese and other languages, because English isn't the only language spoken in this country. There's quite a few languages around here. So we went back a couple of weeks ago, and we saw that they put the signs up. They didn't tell anybody about it, but they're there, and it's something. So we like to try to run them. But the program has its limitations, which we try to advocate for on behalf of the communities. We try to make sure that we address the shortcomings of the Superfund program. We try to lean on the EPA and the TCEQ if they're the ones in charge to kind of get this process moving a little bit faster. So the most recent development, which I think we might have spoken to a few of you about, is So every 5 years after they start doing the cleanup at a site like this, the agency goes back, they review how the cleanup has gone, and they write a report. So it's called a 5-year review. The most recent 5-year review, which marks 10 years of cleanup, was issued in, I think, August of last year, so August 2022, September, right? And it's one of those things, if you're not looking for it, you're not going to find it. Agency didn't really tell us about it. We found it. And that gave us a big reason to be concerned. The EPA, sorry. That's right. So the EPA basically acknowledged that the remediation up to this point hasn't been protective of human health and the environment. There are some what are called existing exposure pathways from the contaminants that haven't been completely addressed by the existing technology at the site. So that's where we are today. And we're trying to address that. We're trying to ask the EPA to take further action at the site. And that's why we're having this meeting. So I'll hand it over to Rachel for everyone.
So I'm just going to talk to you guys a little bit about the update of where we are right now, which is at the 5-year review. As Oscar said, they came out in September of last year, and basically what it comes down to is the 5-year review says that the remedy at this site is not protective of human health and the environment. And because of that, that's why we're here. We have a problem with that it's admittedly not protective. So what exactly does that mean? It means that there are exposures and open exposure pathways that are happening right now, that the risk of exposure through groundwater contamination, the risk of exposure through vapor intrusion, and the risk of exposure through dermal contact are all open exposure pathways that currently exist. So what we're doing is we hosted a press conference on Thursday, as some of you may know, you may have seen the stories, and we are calling on the EPA because we need action right now. We wrote a letter to Dr. Earthia Nance, who is the Region 6 Administrator, asking her to implement another time-critical removal action because we need this contamination under control as soon as possible. So what's the ask? That time-critical removal action. A TICRA is a remedy that's put into place when there is no time to wait for the cleanup action, for a full approval of a cleanup action plan, because those exposures are currently happening. The EPA is authorized to take action doing this under, as Oscar had said, under CERCLA, which is the Comprehensive Environmental Response and Liability Act, and Superfund. So with this, we also have created another smaller version of our letter that is actually on our website that you can sign on to in support of our position to Dr. Nance. And we also have a petition that is currently outside, but I'm going to have them bring that in and pass it around for us so you guys can sign the petition if you didn't when you came in. The petition says the same thing, that we need action right now and that this is a problem that the community is concerned about and we need to get in contact. In the meantime, unfortunately our guest speaker is not here at this moment. Lance from UTMB was going to be here to answer some questions. I'm not sure where he is at the moment. But I will do my best to answer any questions for the study that you guys have. And if you are not signed up for the study and would like to be, we also have all of the paperwork to do that today as well. And so here's Oscar. He's going to start passing around that petition for you guys if you didn't sign it. Our UTMB sampling study, for anybody that does not know, we partnered with the University of Texas Medical Branch to test the water, soil, and air at 55 properties in and around the Superfund site. We have had probably around 90 people at this point sign up as interested, and each round the participants' properties, I believe we're doing between 8 and 10 per sampling round. They're randomly selected, so there's no guarantee that your property will be selected, but it is a possibility. So that's really the updates that I have for you guys on that with the letters and the petitions. We do have an EPA public meeting that is coming up on Monday, February 27th from 6:30 to 8 at Lyle Middle School.
I'm Jason with EPA. I have notices here, if anybody wants one, since she's got to do that.
For the public meeting?
Yeah, we have notices here, and then also a fact sheet, so if anybody wants one, I'll put them up there. Oh, and then the meeting's actually at 6.
It's at 6?
Yeah, 6 to 8.
6 to 8, okay. We'll get that changed.
Or 6 to 7:30? Yeah, sorry, 6 to 7:30.
6 to 7:30?
Need to go back to that very first deal, had an outline of the area, had it out in red,
If you want to pass them around.
that right there.
Yeah, we've got that on the
Oh,
list.
yeah, sorry. Oh, you have it on that there.
Just got a picture of that real quick.
You said that the UTMB bus came back with positive results at different wells when it was testing, or?
The results that we talked about in the press conference, is that what you're referring to?
Well, you just said a minute ago that there was 5 to 8 parts per billion in the parking lot. There was 55 parts. Was the 5 to 8 the UTMB bus, or? Maybe I misheard. I apologize.
I'm sorry, one more time.
So did the UTMB bus come back with any positive test results within its rounds?
We have not gotten any of the results of the analysis yet from the data. We are still waiting for UTMB. They had some technical difficulties with their portable equipment, and so that was an issue that we were having, and so that's why we weren't able to we haven't been able to give results right away like we had initially hoped, but we will be getting those results as soon as we can.
Because one good note is there have been multiple private tests done by ALS within Tower Oaks, and they've all been negative, especially in that red perimeter. There's a pool that is half within the mandatory and then half that's out, and that was tested negative. So that westwardly push that we've seen hopefully is maintaining. I've just seen the UTMB bus in the neighborhood and
Yeah.
testing, and so hopefully those results continue to be negative.
And we will definitely update the community as soon as we start getting those results back. Unfortunately, we don't really have a whole lot of control over that at FIA. We're kind of at the mercy of the university and the bureaucracies that are involved in that and the grant that they have that allows them to do this study. So I really do appreciate everybody's patience with us getting the results and allowing us to come in and do the testing at the homes that we have. And it's gone very smoothly up to this point, and it's been great to meet everybody, and we will definitely get y'all updated, like I said, with the results as soon as we can.
Do you have a company that you can recommend that can test these wells that you did not test?
So yes, as he had mentioned, there's a company called ALS Testing, and they will do it. Unfortunately, this kind of testing is rather expensive, and so that is why a lot of community members are kind of at the in-between of whether or not to do our study or not. Luckily, from what I've seen is the people who have signed up for this study there's a lot of groups per street within the communities on both sides of the plume. And so that's very helpful to know, like maybe if you don't get tested but your neighbor did, you'll kind of still know where about in the area your results might be in that instance.
What was he saying a while ago, that something was tested negative?
A couple of the residents within the Tower Oaks community have gotten independent testing done, and their results have come back negative for the contaminants of concern that we were looking for.
How wide an area will you do testing?
We have about a 2-mile radius from the site right now is where we're looking in. Most of our participants have been within the Tower Oaks community and right up onto the line of, as you can see over here, that red line. It's right up against that, and we do have, I believe, 8 to 12 properties actually inside the plume that we're testing as well.
Who's paying y'all?
We are funded with a grant through the University of Texas Medical Branch. They received a grant to do this study, and then they used us to do the communications and everything within the communities and have everything kind of moving. So we have grant funding through the University of Texas Medical Branch.
Will you take the results from all the testing and create a rough outline of the plume?
Yes.
that we can have access to?
Yes, so once we're finished with the testing and we get all of the results back, we're gonna host what's called an encuentro, which is basically just a very large meeting where we're going to present and go over all of the results that we find. UTMB will be there for that, and they will go over all of the results, as well as everybody that is tested will get their personal results to them as well.
There's also an EPA report that you can see all the old plume and exactly where it is, so that's available too.
Yes.
Would you treat the water out of my well in Tower Oaks?
Personally? No.
Oh, I'm just.
Where do you live, ma'am?
In Tower Oaks.
Tower Oaks.
What streets roughly? Because everything has been tested in Tower, or there have been tests in Tower Oaks that have all come back negative. So there was one on Campos and Lenora, there was one on Mile and Diana, roughly, that all came back negative. So I just wanted to.
Does carbon filtration help for your own water?
To my understanding, yes, the carbon filtration systems are the best to take out these contaminants.
And they are expensive.
Is my understanding that the state and the EPA both recommended not drilling any new wells all the way back to 2002?
Yes.
So if, at this point, if you're still got a well and you're drinking water, I mean, haven't they been saying to the public for 20 years, don't do that?
No.
Okay.
Well,
Within a certain area.
yes, within a certain area they have.
Like
And
the
so
plume?
within
Right.
the plume, yes. There have been many switches to over to city water within the plume. I believe it's like 149 or something like that. Properties have switched over to city water. But I believe that the last time that there was a push to get people to switch over was in 2019.
And you mentioned the shopping center, I think, Oscar, about that people could go in there and eat.
Oh, yeah. it's
And is there a problem with anything in the shopping center as far as the water? I mean, are they on a well or what?
No, the
That
shopping.
wouldn't be smart.
Right, the shopping center is connected to the public water source at this point. They were one of the first ones to get connected. And they have the vapor extraction systems going through the first 3 units of that shopping center, the first being where the dry cleaner was, and then the subsequent 2 after that. But we are concerned that there are vapor intrusion issues within the rest of the shopping center.
Had the test showed that?
There have not been tests performed in the other units, just those first 3.
So y'all think there might be problems in the shopping center?
Well, my understanding is the EPA did test all those and there's none. And that the areas, they have given a clean bill of health report
So
at the shopping center.
the standard at the shopping center is actually an industrial standard, so it is, the levels are at the industrial standard level, and we don't think that that is reasonable to have at a residential shopping center.
What does the UTMB say about that?
I cannot speak for them, I do not know. Yes, ma'am.
What tests are you doing for the perk that breaks down? Are the smaller chemicals also, I know they're more deadly, but
So yes, we are testing for the entire line of the contaminants of concern. I believe that there are either 5 or 6 from the PERC all the way down to vinyl chloride, which is what it's a daughter product and it eventually breaks down into, and vinyl chloride is potentially more potent than the original.
If you had your well tested by UTMB, will you receive anything directly from them? Or?
Yes, you will.
Okay.
You'll receive your results and then also a report that kind of breaks down those results for you. And then I believe they'll be providing information that shows how your results compare to the others as well.
and do you know anything about the health effects thus far? It's been 20 years, so do you know anything about, increased chance of cancer or anything?
So we do know that in this area there is a cancer cluster, as you can see over here at the bottom. Back in 2016, they did a test. The Texas Department of State Health Services tested because there was a concern and did find that there are rates of childhood leukemia that are 2 times the state average of what they expected to find. They have not looked into other cancers, unfortunately, and we are pushing to get them to look into more cancers, and especially adult cancers.
Does that include 77065?
I would have to check. The numbers that are on there are census tracts, and so I would have to double check the overlay.
Wasn't that gym over there where they had the gym, that's where it originated?
That was
Noticed
where,
it.
yeah, that was where it was initially noticed that there was a problem, which led to this study.
So is the flume is that water moving that way or this way? Or,
We are not completely sure, and that's what we would like for the EPA to let us know as well. Yes, ma'am.
Are there other places in Texas that have this issue with PERC that you're
In
aware of?
Texas, I do not know off the top of my head, but I do know that there have been other sites very similar to this. There's one in Franklin, Indiana, in Johnson County, I believe, where they went through something very, very similar.
One other part, California has outlawed PERC as of January the 1st of 23. Do you think that will be something that may happen here? Because it's a solvent used in dry cleaning, so,
Right.
I mean, there's other options other than PERC.
So I actually just looked at this today, and it looks like TCEQ has guidance that suggests that that's no longer allowed unless you're already using PERC. So as far as I know, PERC is no longer being used in new dry cleaners.
PERC is no longer,
Being used in new dry cleaners. So new facilities aren't being authorized to use that, as far as I know,
But you
I
can
would
be
check with the
grandfathered into it.
Yeah, I think some facilities are grandfathered in. They've been using it, they will continue. It depends on the facility.
so if you took your clothes to a dry cleaner, then it wouldn't be untoward to us then what solvents you're using, and if you found out it's PERC, since PERC's going to be in the clothing you pick up, it would be a good idea to maybe change dry cleaners?
I might, but I don't know if they disclose that, so it depends.
So just to give you some numbers, the EPA estimates that there's anywhere between 9 and 90,000 former dry cleaner sites in the United States, and that 70% of them have released chemicals into the ground.
There's a, I forget what county in California, there's a county that I was looking at recently that has a lot. I think they have at least one. So it's a problem all over the U.S.
It makes
What
you
is
wonder why it
this?
takes them 20 years to figure it out.
All right. So since she asked, this right here is this is going to be our second annual Clean Mud for Bugs Crawfish Boil fundraiser that we'll be hosting. It's going to be on Saturday, March 25th from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. at Carbach Brewery. It is a family-friendly event. You can bring your kids, you can bring your grandkids, you can bring anyone. If you scan the QR code right here, it'll take you straight to our ticket sales on our website. There are sponsorship packages as well as individual ticket packages as well.
so if you need to do repairs or update your well that's already in existence, it's okay for you to be doing that, but to drill a new well, you have a problem.
Yes. And I believe that one of those, there's two lines, there's a no new wells area, and then there's a drilling restricted area, where in the drilling restricted area you can still drill a new well. As you can see, the yellow and the red, those are the two different ones. They don't overlap completely. So in the drilling restricted area, you can only drill it to a certain depth. And you can't, and so that's what that restriction is. And then the red one is Harris County's no new well zone, so no new wells can be drilled in that red area at all.
Can you tell me what the well depth of contamination is that you're talking about monitoring?
Off the top of my head, I could not. I do know that that the contamination has contaminated both aquifers, so that it's gone pretty deep.
But one of the things is because the tetrachlorine absorbs to lipid materials in the dirt, that's kind of what's prevented it from moving further west. I think there was a small spike westwardly, but that's kind of what's prevented it from actually moving away from that Superfund site through the aquifers, because it attracts to the lipids.
I did not know that.
Oh, I saw that in the UP report.
Okay.
So I was just wondering about that.
This may be a stupid question, I'm trying to figure it out. If they've been saying don't drill new wells for 20 years, and we know that there's problems in this area, why would anybody be drinking well water? I mean, I get, was it $20 a month with the city? Other than the cost savings, am I missing something?
I can speak to that a little bit. I've talked to a lot of folks in the area, and I think it's a couple of potential issues. I think maybe the outreach has been so dragged out over 10 years that not everybody clearly understood what's happening in the area. I know some people, like you said, just didn't want to pay a monthly bill, maybe didn't understand the implications of drinking
We don't have
water.
access to
What are
city
the options?
water.
Right.
We don't
have access.
We don't have access.
Okay, well, that would be an answer. That's why I said it may be a stupid question, I'm just asking.
It depends on where you live too, because
Right.
basically beyond the delineated area, people weren't extended the same opportunity to go onto city water.
Right.
So there were different risks assessed.
So several of the community members in this room right now are in the Tower Oaks neighborhood, which is directly behind the plume. And so, like he was saying, that connection to the city water was only extended to the plume's extent. And so all of these houses on the other side of it were not offered that opportunity.
So do y'all have a petition to get the state to get pipes to these folks' house so that they don't have to use well water? I mean, that seems like a really good project. If, this is all government
Well, see, there are some
projects.
people who don't want city water with burn notices and contaminations and heavy filtration and chemicals in it. I've lived on both. I prefer well water, which is why I am so diligent in making sure that my well water is clean, because I absolutely love it. And so that's why I don't want to burn my water and boil my water.
We don't have access to city water where we are.
Are you gonna say?
No, I was just gonna say, within the plume, Raji and I went to every single home. We went I went twice. And then we went door to door. We went door to door and asked if people wanted well water. The reason, within the plume, that's a little off. Yeah, the water line outlines where that red line is. Yeah, the plume is just barely coming in. So it's far from that outside line. And where we have set up the extraction wells to pull the stuff up and clean it is behind the old dry cleaner. So it's sucking that water back. So chances are
You'll
that
be quiet
water,
on the back row so we can hear.
chances are that water's not gonna pass that red line because we're sucking it back to clean it. So that's an
I don't see a
ongoing
red
thing.
line. Oh, you mean the
Yeah.
square?
Yeah, yeah.
So the red boundary line that you're seeing there is what is considered the Superfund site. It's the Superfund site boundary line, the red one.
So you're extracting water from all three plumes of water? How do you suck water from 240 feet down? You have extractors down 240 feet pulling the water back.
Yeah, you should come to our meeting, we'll be able to advise you there. You
And
didn't
at
want
that
to,
facilities behind there, where there's no extensive water tanks, you're pulling water from all three plumes of water and cleaning it.
We are pulling vapor from the
You're pulling
shallow
vapor,
zone
not
and
water.
then from the unsaturated.
So you're not pulling water, you're pulling
Not the water,
vapors.
but when we are pulling the vapor, it does pull the water from the lower zone and also the shallow
So
zone.
from 10 feet of down, vapors, you're pulling water past the 40-foot plume and pulling water from the 240-foot plume back to the 11-foot
We are not
vapor
pulling
extractor.
water from.
You're not pulling water.
From the unsaturated zone, 60 to 110 feet, so we're pulling not water, but the vapor. But because it's unsaturated, there is water there, so then it's pulling that.
If you had to guess at how many gallons of water you're moving from the 240-foot area, where a lot of us have our wells,
I can definitely provide all that information. at the
would you say it's
meeting.
thousands of
It's
gallons?
thousands of gallons, but
The
I don't
EPA
know.
report
Yeah, it's
said all of
thousands of
that.
gallons.
if you read the EPA.
And these are all good, this is a really great question that you can ask them directly during their meeting on the
We just
27th.
wanted to come and, find out so that we can also provide you with all those answers. And we can definitely provide you with all those results. So thanks for that question.
For anyone who's curious, and for anyone who doesn't already know this, the EPA maintains a website specifically for this Superfund site. So if you type in Jones Road Groundwater Plume Superfund site, it'll probably be the first link. And if you want to know some of the more technical information, pretty much every technical review or technical document from the first record of decision back in, I think, 2008. Yeah, everything is up there. So if you want to get into, I actually saw that figure as estimated originally earlier this morning, but I can't recall. That information will be in some of the reports.
So, coming back to something you said a little earlier, that both the Chico and the Evangeline aquifers have been tested, and the the second one has tested positive as well.
It has reached the second aquifer, yes.
Who did that testing? Where are those results?
I believe the EPA and those results should also be in those reports.
Because if that's true, because all of us who are on water wells, we're all in the Chico. But when you get down in the lower aquifer, now you're talking about the muds. And that brings in a whole new perspective of who's affected by this.
What's a Chico?
It's an aquifer. The Chico
It's the first
aquifer.
Is that where all our wells are?
Most of them.
In Taro?
What is the depth of that?
I
Have any idea?
I don't off the top of my head. I don't have that.
I know there's wells here in this area that are.
It's around 250 to 300. You get down below 400, you get down in the second aquifer.
Okay, that's
I'm at
not
150.
You're in the Chico.
It never stops raining except for extreme climate. Like freeze, they turn it on.
So this is how many gallons a day we're pulling?
Yeah, most.
Our well is 245, but the water level is 135.
Since beginning,
How do you know?
it's 165. This would have been months or years, I'm not sure. In total, this would have
I wouldn't have known
been a
either
short period
if
of
I had had the
time.
pump place. We had to pull the whole line out.
In total.
So do y'all have a petition to sign to try to get municipal access to the folks that don't have it?
We do not currently. Our petition at the moment is for a time critical renewal action, which is kind of broad. It's whatever would work in this exact instance, so that it could be included in that. I do know that the last time that the EPA did the outreach for the wells, I believe was in 2019, and so it might be worth mentioning at the EPA meeting on the 27th that we'd like to have another round if that happened.
Are you going to petition the neighbors to see if they want that?
Part of the reason we're doing this study with the University of Texas Medical Branch is to determine how necessary that might be if the plume is migrated in such a way as to be a concern in that area. So we're taking small steps to try to figure out if that's really the solution. But ultimately, it's up to the EPA. So I hope that helps. We're trying to figure out what it looks like today. So.
Has anybody in the area hooked up to a company that's putting out the water for them or supplying them with water?
I know that there have been several hundred, or not several hundred, at least probably close to 200 connections within the boundary line of the Superfund site, but outside of that, the connection has not been offered.
I understood somebody on Wood Edge as it's coming into the subdivision, just hooked up, there's a water supply there for the fire trucks. And so, how much, has anybody figured how much this cost whoever they started getting the water from?
I do not know. I do know that the EPA, when they did offer this, it was a free connection, so the actual connection fee was waived to get people onto the city water. But then after that, they had to pick up those water bills. On wood edges, you'll see right here, that's actually that boundary line. So the water line goes around here, and so everything within it in here has access. Basically, the pipes have run up on the curbs for everybody, and so you just have to say that you're interested in connecting to the EPA, and you can get that connection done.
I don't think that's city water.
I believe it's a mud. My apologies.
Can I just say one thing on the map? The one that's in yellow, that is the water line, and that is the no new wells line. And then the one that's in red, that is actually the district restriction area. So the water line runs along the yellow line, and everything within that yellow line is where we went door to door.
Sorry, that one.
So the drilling, it's
Yes, ma'am. This is y'all's map.
oh, we'll see, but it's split.
Okay. Well, that's good to know.
Yes.
Okay. Does anybody have any other questions this evening? And do we have the location of the petition clipboard? Right there. Did that make it all the way up here? Can we pass that forward?
Rachel, if we signed the petition before, do we need to re-sign it?
No, if you signed it out there.
No, not today.
Oh, this is a new one. Yeah, so this is brand new. I wrote this yesterday.
What's the western edge of the yellow line? Do you know that street?
It's the drainage.
I know that one of them is Glenora.
Okay.
One of them is, I'm not sure. Because it kind of runs like, it runs through the creek right behind,
It's the drainage ditch, Tower Oaks and
yeah, Oak Valley Drive is the edge boundary of that one. And it's not the front of Oak Valley, it's the creek right behind it.
Hey, I know the one, she cuts my dog's hair, the one that has the kennel in the shopping center, and her name is Tammy. And she says that somebody from y'all, named Pam, is she here? Pam was selling her.
She's not here.
Was selling her, trying to sell her water filters on your company.
We don't have a company.
Did you sign it? That's what she said, it was y'all's company.
Did y'all sign it? So we're a nonprofit, we don't sell anything. Well, I'm saying that we don't. So we don't have a water filtration company. We do know Pam. She does not work for us. She does work for a water filtration company, but we are not affiliated with that
And so how do
company.
y'all know Pam then?
She is Jackie's mom. So our executive director is her mother. And several of our team members actually use the filtration
So
system.
your executive director works for a filtration company?
No.
Her mother.
Her daughter works for a filtration.
No, her mom.
Yeah, they got mixed up.
So our executive director, her name is Jackie. Jackie's mom is Pam. Pam works for a filtration company.
Got it. So somebody affiliated with y'all has a connection with the company that's selling water filters and filtration. So you guys talk about how bad it is, and they come in and try to sell water filters? There's no connection between them?
No, it's just an option. It's a company that we are aware of. It is an option that we have recommended, but we do not back this company. We're not affiliated with the company. If we knew other companies that do the same thing. We recommend the system itself, which is called a cat hack, which several companies sell. And we
Not a
provide
cat in a hat.
Right, HAC.
Because I would not like green eggs in ham.
Understand.
Tell me again what you recommend. What's it called?
A cat hack, CAT-HAC. And it's a multi-level filtration system that is known to pull out over 2,000 chemicals, I believe, chemicals and contaminants from water.
Wow.
But if your land's been tested and you don't have any problems, then you wouldn't need to spend money on that.
Not if you have a well.
You could tell that cat in the hat to get out. Don't come around here when my mom's gone.
I have flood water and I have one, and the water tastes a lot better.
Because that's what my daughter, not to take her dog there anymore, and I'd like to know if they got it. And
Their water's on.
Alright. If then nobody has any more questions, if you would like to sign up for the UTMB sampling study to possibly get your well tested, we have that sign-up sheet outside on your way out. And then we also have the petition that is floating around if you would like to sign that as well. And if you haven't signed it, please do that on your way out. And if you have any other questions, you can contact me, and I will answer any questions that you might
Have been since 2000.
They asked us to go on.
Yes, but I just.
That was our meeting between
The guy from West Street is right.
This right here is the email address. He's a toxicologist through UTMB. What's going to be this evening.